Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to explore the moment everything changes. Alex returns to the farm to build a safer home, but Tuna arrives to find the kitchen gone and the garden torn apart, and one decision could either bring them closer or break what little peace they have. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. The late afternoon sun was fading over the empty fields when Alex stopped at the edge of the farm and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts with a quiet, simmering worry. Behind him, the old house crouched under mossy tiles, its walls cracked like time had clawed at them for years. It wasn't just old, it was unsafe. And in Alex's mind, unsafe meant one thing: it had to change. He tapped a number and raised the phone to his ear. "Mr. Dung," he said as soon as the call connected. His voice stayed low but firm. "I need an excavator and a grader out here, today if possible, tomorrow at the latest." While Mr. Dung asked questions about access roads and fuel, Alex kept staring at the house. He didn't see bricks and wood, he saw Tuna and little Henry living inside it, trying to make a home in a place that couldn't protect them. He remembered the drafts that slipped through gaps, the damp smell after rain, the way the roof looked like it was always one storm away from giving up. He sent the location pin, repeated the directions, and ended the call. The screen went dark, but his chest stayed tight. This wasn't a normal project, not for him. It felt like a silent promise, one he hadn't even spoken to Tuna yet, and that was where the fear came in. Change is supposed to be good, but it can still hurt. Alex worried she'd think he was erasing her memories. He worried he was moving too fast. Still, he told himself, love doesn't wait for perfect timing. Love does what needs to be done, even when it's uncomfortable. Earlier that day, he'd been at the timber workshop where everything was loud and urgent. Saws screamed, boards slammed, and the air carried the sharp scent of fresh pine. Tet was approaching and year-end orders were piling up. Alex moved through the stacks of veneer and lumber, checking inventory and giving short instructions. Stack it clean, move the logs down from the hill, sort the large pieces first, don't mix them, he told the crew. He watched the workers' hands quick and practiced, and he thought about their lives too. They'd be going home soon, chasing buses and motorbikes back to their families. He wanted the workshop organized so nobody got stuck working late because of sloppy planning. But even in the middle of all that noise, Alex kept picturing Tuna at the market. Tuna's world was quieter but heavier. She sat behind a small potato stall, smiling at customers even when her eyes looked tired. She lowered the price for regular buyers, not because she could afford it, but because their loyalty kept her afloat. Every bag of potatoes was another meal, another day of diapers, another step toward keeping Henry healthy. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for sympathy. She just worked the way people work when they don't have backup. And that was the part Alex couldn't shake. She'd been doing everything alone for a long time. Two separate lives, his filled with machinery and schedules, hers filled with bargaining and survival, both tied to the same quiet goal: make tomorrow softer for an innocent child. By late afternoon, Alex drove back to the farm, expecting progress but not chaos. The moment he arrived, he froze. The ground had been leveled so hard it looked scraped raw. The fish pond was dredged clean. The kitchen area was stripped down and parts of the house were already dismantled. Tracks from heavy equipment cut through Tuna's vegetable patch. Fences lay collapsed. Torn netting hung like broken cloth. Chickens ran loose, pecking at whatever green was left. Alex's stomach dropped. Regret hit first, sharp and immediate. He hadn't meant for it to look like destruction. He'd meant for it to be the start of safety. He called Tuna right away. "Where are you?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle even as his pulse thudded. She told him she was on her way back from the market. So Alex waited there in the wind, standing in the open space where walls used to be. The farm felt bigger without the kitchen, emptier without the familiar corners. He could already imagine Tuna's face when she saw it. He could already hear the silence she would use to hold herself together. He called Mr. Dung again, urgency bleeding through his calm. Builders tomorrow, no delays. Tet is close and we don't have time to drift. Every hour suddenly felt expensive. Then Tuna arrived. She stepped onto the farm and stopped, eyes widening as if she'd walked into the wrong place. Her gaze moved from the missing kitchen to the exposed beams to the scarred garden. For a moment, she didn't speak. The shock sat on her face like a weight. Alex approached slowly. "It moved fast," he said. "The machines, they do a lot in a short time." Tuna swallowed. Her voice came out thin. "The kitchen," she murmured, and she didn't need to finish the sentence. Henry was with her, and Alex lifted the boy into his arms. Henry stayed quiet, resting against Alex's chest, blinking as if he could feel the adults holding their breath. Alex adjusted him on his hip, trying to steady the moment. Tuna's first emotion wasn't anger, it was worry. "Where will we stay now?" she asked, eyes scanning the wreckage like she was searching for an untouched corner. "At my place," Alex said immediately. "You and Henry can stay with me." Tuna shook her head, firm but not dramatic. "I need to be close," she replied. "The chickens, the pigs, I can't be far." She suggested Mrs. Tang's house instead, nearby enough that she could still tend the animals and feel like she hadn't abandoned the farm. Alex nodded. He understood. He didn't push. But the bigger conversation was unavoidable. Alex said what he believed. The safest choice would be full demolition. Tear it down completely. Rebuild properly. No hidden rot, no weak beams, no walls that might fail in the next storm. Tuna's hands tightened around her bag strap. "It's still a house," she said, voice trembling. "It has memories, and it's wasteful to tear everything down." Alex looked at her and saw what she wasn't saying. This place was all she had. When you've lived through scarcity, you learn to hate waste like it's a sin. Even broken bricks feel valuable. He exhaled slowly, choosing connection over control. "Okay," he said. "We keep the frame. We reinforce it. We repair what can be repaired, but we make it safe. No shortcuts." Tuna's shoulders lowered a fraction, like she'd been bracing for a fight. She handed Henry back to Alex, gave a small, strained smile, and walked toward the house to pack what she could. Alex held Henry close and looked across the torn garden and scattered debris. He lowered his voice, more like a vow than a comfort. "A safer home," he whispered. "No more wind through the cracks, no more fear when the rain starts." The evening air moved across the farm again, carrying dust and the feeling of something ending, painfully, but also the first faint outline of something better beginning. Tuna came back out with 2 packed bags and a bundled blanket, just as the sky shifted from gold to purple. Without the kitchen walls, wind ran straight through the open space, tugging at torn netting and lifting scraps of plastic. Alex took the heavier bag. "Don't carry that," he said, steady and practical. He kept Henry on his hip and managed the load without complaint. Tuna looked around once more, eyes catching on the scattered boards and the chickens running loose. "I'll come back early tomorrow," she said quickly. "I have to feed them and check the pigs." "I know," Alex replied. "We'll come together in the morning." They got into the car and drove toward Mrs. Tang's. The road was narrow and familiar, the village already slipping into that pre-Tet rhythm. Cooking smoke, distant voices, a few early red decorations bright against dusk. Tuna stared out the window, quiet. Alex didn't force conversation. Mrs. Tang's house appeared under the last light, modest, clean, with a small yard and tidy vegetable beds. Mrs. Tang was outside picking greens. She looked up, saw them, and her face warmed immediately. "Tuna, Henry?" she called, already walking closer. Alex stepped forward. "Auntie Tang," he said respectfully, "I'm sorry to come late." "What happened?" she asked, eyes moving between their faces. Alex explained simply. "We started repairing the farm. The machines moved faster than expected. The house isn't safe to stay in tonight." He paused, then asked, "Could Tuna and Henry stay here temporarily, just until we reinforce the place?" Tuna lowered her gaze, embarrassed to need help, but Mrs. Tang answered instantly. "Of course, there's room. A house with more people is warmer." Tuna bowed. "Thank you, Auntie. I didn't want to go far. I still need to care for the animals." Mrs. Tang touched Henry's cheek with gentle fingers. "This boy needs warmth, not drafts," she murmured, then waved them inside. The house smelled like rice and garlic. Mrs. Tang showed Tuna a spare room, extra blankets, and where to place the bags. Henry yawned, rubbing his eyes, leaning into Tuna's shoulder. Alex stood in the doorway, relief mixing with guilt. Mrs. Tang caught his expression and spoke plainly. "Fixing a rotten house is never pretty at the start. Don't torture yourself." Dinner was simple but hot. Rice, soup, sautéed greens, and a plate of meat. They sat together under dim lamplight, Mrs. Tang steady at the head of the table, Tuna beside her, Alex across from Tuna. Henry slept in a small cradle nearby. Alex served Mrs. Tang first. "How's your leg lately?" he asked. Mrs. Tang waved it off. "Better. Old bones complain when they want attention." He nodded, then added, "When the farm is stable again, you should come by often. Henry likes you." "I'll visit," she said, "but I like my own bed. Don't try to move me in." That made Tuna's mouth twitch into a small smile, the tension finally easing from her shoulders. As they ate, Mrs. Tang told a few quiet Tet stories, years when everyone had little and neighbors shared what they could. Her voice softened the room. Tuna listened, occasionally adding a word, and Alex watched her face settle into something calmer than it had been all afternoon. Near the end of the meal, Tuna said, almost apologizing, "Auntie, I'm sorry to trouble you." Mrs. Tang set her chopsticks down. "Stop. You're not a burden. You're a mother. People help mothers or they're not worth much." Tuna nodded quickly, eyes shining for a moment before she looked away. Alex felt his chest tighten, not with panic this time, but with something closer to gratitude. When the table was cleared and the night fully settled, Alex stood. "I should go. Tomorrow will be long." He leaned over the cradle and kissed Henry's forehead. "See you tomorrow," he whispered. At the door, Mrs. Tang reminded him, "Drive carefully." "I will. Thank you, Auntie," Alex said, then turned to Tuna. "Get some rest." Tuna walked him to the yard. The air was cool, the sky dark and clear. They stood in a brief silence that felt heavier than it looked. "I should have told you more clearly," Alex said. "I didn't want you to be shocked." Tuna nodded once. "It happened," she said quietly. "We can't put it back. We just fix it." "Tomorrow," Alex replied, "we plan together. I won't move ahead of you." Her voice softened. "Thank you." Alex drove away, headlights sweeping the village road. As the engine hummed, he pictured the farm not as it looked now, exposed and broken, but as it could look soon. Reinforced beams, a roof that didn't leak, walls that kept warmth in. He also understood something he'd almost missed. Love isn't only building new things. Sometimes it's protecting what someone isn't ready to lose. Tet was close, work was heavy, but Tuna and Henry weren't distant worries anymore. They were part of his life now, anchored by small acts, and offered room, a shared meal, a promise to return in the morning. Before Alex left, he checked the small room Mrs. Tang had offered. It wasn't big, but it was clean, with a sturdy bed and a window that shut properly. Tuna spread her blanket carefully, smoothing the wrinkles as if that tiny order could hold the day together. Alex pulled out a few essentials from the bags: Henry's bottle, powdered milk, a change of clothes. "You're covered for tonight?" he asked. Tuna nodded. "For tonight? Tomorrow I'll go back for the rest." "Tomorrow I'll help," he said, cutting off her reflex to refuse. "Not because you can't, because it's faster." Mrs. Tang brought in a kettle of warm water and set it down without ceremony. Tuna washed Henry's hands and face, then changed him. Henry let out a small giggle when the warm cloth touched his cheek, and that tiny sound briefly softened everything in the room. After dinner, while Mrs. Tang cleared the table, Alex stepped outside and called Mr. Dung again. "Tomorrow morning, early," he said. "And be careful near the pens. The fencing is down." He ended the call and stood under the night sky for a moment, counting priorities: secure the animals, rebuild the fence line, reinforce beams, patch the roof. It was a lot, but it was the kind of a lot he could move through with his hands. Back inside, Henry was already drowsy. Tuna tucked him in, then turned toward Alex. Her eyes held gratitude and exhaustion, and she didn't try to hide either. "Sleep," Alex told her quietly. "Tomorrow we fix it, one step at a time." When Alex finally pulled onto the road, his phone buzzed. A neighbor's message lit the screen. "Chickens near the road, fence broken." Alex tightened his grip on the wheel and looked ahead into the dark. Rebuilding, he realized, wouldn't be a straight line. It would be a series of small emergencies, handled one by one, until the farm stopped feeling fragile. Behind him in Mrs. Tang's house, Tuna lay down beside her sleeping son, listening to a roof that held steady above them, while the next day waited on the other side of dawn. Alex juggles year-end chaos at his timber workshop with rising worry for Tuna and baby Henry in a dangerous, crumbling farmhouse. Determined to protect them, he hires Mr. Dung's crew and sends heavy machines to start urgent repairs before Tet. But the work moves too fast. The kitchen is torn down, the pond is dredged, fences collapse, and Tuna's garden is scarred, sending chickens running loose. When Tuna returns from the market, she's stunned and anxious about where to sleep and how to care for the animals. Alex offers his home, but she chooses to stay near the farm at Mrs. Tang's. They argue over demolition versus saving memories, then compromise to keep the frame and reinforce it. A shared meal at Mrs. Tang's brings warmth, and Alex leaves with a quiet promise to rebuild safely,